This overview of EnvisionManager is focused on the Consoles tab. The Console tab is used to set up customized user buttons to streamline site operations. User buttons can activate a preset for an area or can be a shortcut to perform complex site functions. It also allows for the ability to run macros or tasks that have been defined on the project. Notice there is an overall building view. This default view appears in any project. You then have a view for each plan that has been added. Notice how each view can have a different selection of buttons. This video will take us through the process of setting up these buttons. We start as a new user. As you can see, initially the screen is blank. We start by left-clicking the Setup button at the bottom of the screen. In the wizard, our first option is to select a backdrop for the screen. This backdrop can be applied to the console view for each plan. Step 2 allows the choice of a plan or group of buttons. Selecting a plan here will display a button for each area of that plan, allowing simple preset changes on screen. If you only wish to select specific areas, then go to step 3 and don't select anything in step 2. For our example, we are going to choose both plans on step 2 to display all of our preset buttons. Step 4 allows us to add pre-configured macros as buttons. Moving to step 5, we are now setting global views for all our console pages. At this point, we are not going to do this. We are going to set some individual buttons directly on the next console page. So we will move through the wizard and choose Finish. Back on the main console page, we can see buttons for each area within our plan. Our two plans have been divided into columns. The position of the columns will depend on the resolution of your screen. The preset for each area is initially unknown, but as the server polls, we notice the buttons will reflect the current presets in those areas. The refresh happens automatically, but you will also notice a manual refresh button in the top right of the screen. A preset within an area can be changed by left-clicking on the button and then choosing the relevant preset to change to. We will now move to the DALI level, where we will add some specific console buttons. Left-click on the Setup button. This is not a global setup and only applies to the current console view. Again, we can select a backdrop before choosing which buttons to display. This time we ignore step 2 and move to step 3, where we will select some specific areas. We then move through the menus until we can click on Finish. We will now add our own choice of buttons. First, we left-click on the Edit button. We are given the option again to adjust the background. Looking up to the top of the screen, left-click at the top of the column we have added. Notice the options that are now available. We can add a new button group or just add extra columns to our current group. Left-click Add New Button Group. We then left-click on the column itself to highlight it. This displays the button group properties. First, we're going to rename this group Task Buttons. Notice you can also adjust the button sizes in the group. We will now start to add buttons. Click the drop-down arrow next to Add Buttons. We will go through each option in turn. The first option is a preset button. This requires choosing an area. For our example, we will choose Reception. The colour chosen dictates the shading of the buttons. Once defined, we will notice the ability to adjust the preset within an area. This mirrors the default preset buttons that we have already displayed on the left-hand side of the screen. Our second option is to create a simple button. This allows selection of an area and then the ability to add a sequence of actions when the button is pressed. For our example, we are going to choose the area of the office. And we're going to set the button to scroll through presets 1 through to 4, high, medium, low, and off. Notice how we add the individual actions, and in our example also include 5-second delays between each action. Once this has been saved, we can then click on the button on the screen. As the presets are scrolling through, notice the Office preset button on the left, scrolling between the various presets in our action list. The third button option is a toggle button. This allows us the ability to toggle between two different states. For our example, the button will toggle between preset high and preset low in the boardroom. The button text shows the next state. Once saved, we will compare this to the boardroom area button to the left. Notice when we click on our toggle button, the states change accordingly. The next option in our sequence of buttons is the OnOff button. This is similar to the toggle button, but the states are already set for us as on and off. For our example, we're going to control the toilet area. It is important to change the text on the buttons to help to avoid any confusion with the information on screen. In our example, we are also changing the colors of the buttons and also the text color to represent the on and off states. When testing the button, notice the change in the toilet area button to the left that mirrors our new on-off button. Finally, we have a configurable button as our final option. A configurable button has a lot more functionality. One of the most common reasons configurable buttons are used is to track the states on the network. The standard area buttons that have been added will track any changes on the live network. However, if you compare that to the toggle button we set up, Notice when we click the toggle button, the boardroom button to the left is changing. However, if we make our changes from the boardroom button on the left, notice the toggle button doesn't change to match the states. This is because the toggle button is not tracking any changes elsewhere on the network. If we view the configuration that has been set up, the key is that the configurable button has both states and actions. Looking at the states screen, the button click event runs the action, while the preset event captures the change on the network. It is essential to make sure that the next state has been defined with both the button click and the preset event. Notice how the button tracks accordingly when either the toggle button or the boardroom preset button is changed. That completes the introduction to the console tab. You have learnt how to set up default buttons on different views and also how to define specific buttons for specific tasks. A final point to take from this video is that once buttons have been defined, it is possible to control user access to those buttons within the user settings. See the video on adding and managing users for more information.